talk very quickly about resumes and what a resume is and how you can put one together. But really, what I want to really get across is the impact a resume can have on a potential employer. Now, when you're applying for a job, the company you're applying to, the HR manager, the recruiter, they have no idea who you are. So you need to consider a resume as being truly your very, very first introduction to that company, and a document that you're using to wow them to take you to the next step, to call you in for an interview. Now, there's a number of steps I've outlined in the accompanying PDF, but I want to give a few more details and a little bit of insight into what somebody thinks when they're going through a resume for the first time. Now, of course, presentation is critical. It needs to be well laid out and well presented, starting, of course, with your contact details. You can have an opening line. A lot of more entry-level resumes will include a statement such as objective. I see a lot of resumes coming across my desk where the objective says something like, I'd like to find a great job, to learn new skills. Now, I'll just flip it around a little bit. It's the employer isn't giving you a job to benefit you, they're giving you a job to benefit them and the company. So I'd suggest changing the objective line just a little bit to say something more along the lines of what you can offer the company instead of what the company can offer you. So you can have an opening objective line. It could be an overview, a very brief summary as to who you are. Then you need to get straight into your experience. Now, the reason for this is that just like when you read a book, you always read from left to right, and you don't read each single word on the page. You tend to read the shape of the words. A resume is very similar. When a recruiter's reading a resume, they're scanning from top to bottom, and they're looking to pick out key critical information. They're looking for the specific things that are relevant to the job they're hiring for. So, and they expect to see that information in a very sequential way. They're looking for a certain flow of information. So always start off with your experience. So most recent job followed by the preceding jobs that you've had. You can add a little blurb about what you did, maybe a few bullet points for your main responsibilities. Now, think strategically again about the bullet points you give. If you worked in a kitchen, would you say, I chopped onions, I chopped vegetables? We understand if you're a chef, you might have been involved in food preparation. So perhaps give a few details that you ordinarily wouldn't consider very intuitive, such as you helped with catering events, menu planning, that type of thing. So once you've gone through your experience, then you'll get into your education, and again, starting with the most recent. I see a lot of resumes where people give an incredible wealth of information all the way back to their grade school, primary school. If you have a university degree, you don't need to necessarily get into where you went to high school. If you've achieved high school and haven't gone beyond high school yet, then by all means include where you graduated high school and in which year. So you've covered the experience, education, then add following that, any certifications or certificates you might have that might be relevant to the job you're applying for, such as have you taken any online computer training? Have you taken any courses on platforms like Udemy? List those courses as well. They're great. They show that you're staying current, and especially add them if they're very relevant to the job you're doing. Following that, think about other things you might want to include. I tend to suggest people steer away from adding interests. You know, it's great to know that people like to read books, they like to collect comic books, but a recruiter doesn't necessarily need to know that information unless there's a very direct connection to the job you're applying for. So I would skip interests, but maybe add other activities you're involved in, such as volunteer. If you're involved in any volunteer work, that's huge. A lot of companies have a philosophy of giving back and being involved in their communities, and they like to see people that often have the same perspective that they have. So if you have been involved in any volunteer work, add the volunteer work that you're involved in. It's great work anyway, it's relevant experience, and it shows that you're a well-rounded person, very concerned with your community. Following the volunteer section or your final section, it's always good to add a line that references can be contacted or will be submitted upon request. Now, that's a given. Everybody will at some point have to give references anyway, but what that line does, it's a nice, easy way to conclude your resume and to say this is where it ends. So starting from the top again, we want to go immediately with your objective or with an overview. Actually, backing up just a little step further, your contact section. Please make sure that your contact details are current. You wouldn't believe how many resumes I see where the phone number is out of service, the email address is wrong, the email address is no longer in service or they're not using it anymore. Sometimes people come in and give me a resume and they've scratched out their phone number and in pencil written another phone number. It doesn't look very professional. Make sure when you're sending a resume or dropping it off, it's very, very current. So add obviously your name. You don't have to give your full physical address, your street address, your city is fine. There's lots of reasons why, and I'll discuss those maybe in another video, why we don't want to necessarily give our full street address. Avoid personal details. In some countries in the world, it's very common to add a photograph and to add marital status and how many children you have and how old you are. I would tend to steer away from this. In many cases, in many jurisdictions, in Europe and in North America, there's actually a lot of laws which are designed to avoid discrimination of any kind. So because of that, employers and recruiters do not want to see personal information. They just want to base your application on the merits of your academic and professional accomplishments. So avoid adding personal contact details. Just give your city, your state, your province that you're in, your phone number, your email address. If you have a LinkedIn address, it's always good to add that as well. I would tend to steer away from adding a Facebook address. At this point in the game, you don't want people digging into your personal social life or what you do in your spare time. So avoid giving personal social media accounts. But if you have a professional LinkedIn account, by all means give that as well. And trust me, recruiters do look at LinkedIn accounts. And I'll be doing a quick video on adding to this. There'll be a video in this series discussing LinkedIn profiles. So just a few insights and tips into a resume. Make sure it's well presented. Avoid fancy graphics, little pictures, icons. If you're applying online, applicant tracking systems tend to have a hard time with that, and it kind of messes up the flow of how those online platforms read resumes. So just keep it clean, keep it straightforward. Contact details, experience, academic experience, certifications, and any volunteer work you might have done, and you'll be on your way to having a very good resume. So I hope you got some value from this. There's more videos in this series, and please, if you haven't already, consider joining the private members only Facebook group, where we'll take this conversation a little bit further and we'll share experiences with other people on the job hunt just like you. Thanks very much, and see you in the next video.